Joining us is Liberal MP Julian Leeser. Julian, nice to see you. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. We want to get your reaction firstly to revelations that China actually tipped PNG off to the Chinese warships 2 weeks before they started conducting these live fire drills. What have you got to say about that?
I think it's extraordinary that this is a government that is boasting, the Albanese government is boasting about its stabilisation agenda with China, and yet Papua New Guinea knew 2 weeks before the Prime Minister knew, or anyone knew, about these exercises in the Tasman Sea. It seems extraordinary. I mean, you had the Chief of the Defence Force, you had the Secretary of the Defence Department, you had the Director General of National Intelligence describing this as a rehearsal, describing this as provocative, describing this as unprecedented. And yet the first Australian knew about it was a Virgin Airlines pilot telling us about it. We've outsourced our surveillance here off our coast to New Zealand. And I think the Prime Minister owes all Australians an apology for his weakness in national security, for his weakness in defence, and for misleading Australians about when we were first told about these issues.
Well, the other group that might be due an apology would be the Israeli government after revelations that Penny Wong, during her United Nations visit last September, and of course you remember she went to the United Nations, called for an immediate ceasefire at the very time that hostages were still being held in Gaza. Hezbollah were attacking northern Israel. She called for a two-state solution and recognition of a Palestinian state before Hamas had even been defeated. All of that is happening, and we find out that she did not meet with any Israeli officials at all, but found time to meet with Palestinian Authority, with the Iranians. She went to a dinner at which all the Arab nations discussed the future of the Middle East without an Israeli representative. I just wanted to get your thoughts. How do you explain Penny Wong going to the UN and not meeting with a single Israeli official when they are our key ally in the Middle East? What's the explanation for that?
Well, this is true to form for Penny Wong, unfortunately, James. When you'll remember, before the last election, Labor figures promised there would be no difference in relation to Israel between Labor and the coalition. It was the biggest lie that's ever been told. I've said right from the start that Penny Wong's had a blind spot when it comes to Israel. Remember, as people were searching for bodies and terrorists hadn't been brought to heel in those kibbutzim in the south, Penny Wong was calling for Israel to exercise restraint. Remember, she compared Israel to Russia and China in relation to the rule of law. Remember that when she went to Israel, she showed contempt for the people of Israel by failing to go south to visit the sites of those dreadful massacres on October 7. Remember, she's given extra funding to UNRWA, and I know while she was at the UN, she also attended a meeting with UNRWA, and we know that UNRWA was involved in the October 7 terrorist attack. So to see the quiet contempt she continues to show for Israel is just extraordinary. We need the election of a Dutton government to see a foreign policy where we stand for our values and we stand by our friends. And Penny Wong's contempt for Israel yet again at the United Nations shows that she and Anthony Albanese are not fit to continue governing this country.